Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Looks like we've got a pretty good group out there for this afternoon's discussion about e-extension. And I'm sure that all of you have heard something about e-extension. If you're familiar with what USDA is stressing these days, you'll know that e-extension has been something that's been on their agenda for the last several years. I'm not sure if you realize that the most recent national project, RFA, had specific requirements for collaboration with e-extension. So that may be the case with your state project RFAs when they come out. I can't tell you that for sure, but I would not be surprised if you see that in your RFAs that indicate that collaboration is necessary. And maybe our presenters will have more information on that. I'm not sure that they know or not, but before we get started, I know many of you have heard these instructions multiple times, but I think we've got a couple of new people out there at least. So hopefully you're hearing me. If not, you need speakers or headphones. There is no phone connection for this particular webinar. You can check your connection speed under the meeting menu and manage my settings. If you have questions during the presentation about the presentation, you have a couple of options. We now have the capacity to allow you to answer questions or ask questions verbally. All you need to do is click the raise hand icon at the top of your screen, the little person with their hand raised, and that will indicate to us that you have a question. We can then activate your microphone if you have one, and you can ask your question that way. We are taking questions during the presentation this afternoon, so feel free to raise your hand at any point. You can also type questions in the chat window if you'd prefer that, or if you don't have a microphone. We will do our 4 poll questions at the end, so please stick around after the questions and answers are finished. We're recording this, and we'll be making the PowerPoint available also on our website. And if you have any technical issues, please try to use the chat window first for those. We'll keep monitoring that. If you can't use the window, then just please email me at jonesp@purdue.edu. In terms of technical issues, again, we know that trying to connect to your microphones may be challenging if you raise your hand, but please try to do that. We'd like to continue to expand our capabilities in that and make these sessions more interactive. So please feel free to do that. We have not, thankfully, had any presenters disconnected during the virtual NTW. Hope that is not the case this afternoon, but if they are, then please just hang on. And if you are disconnected as a participant, please just log in again through the same interface. We have not had anybody that I know of bounced out the last couple of times, so that's a good sign. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Aaron Yoder and Linda Fetzer at Penn State. I know many of you are familiar with Linda from her time with AgrAbility, and I'm sure that some of you also know Aaron from his participation in a lot of farm safety activities. So we'll turn it over to them, and I'll come back at the end for the poll questions.
Arrow beside it. One of the goals of this online training is to give people a document of that certify or that tells you that they've been trained, so they can use this to verify. We've had people contact us that say, my insurance company wants proof that I'm training my employees, so this would give them that proof. It gives them the certificate. If we can go to the next page worked. Yay for small things. So we can show this certificate. It says what course they've been through. It has my contact information if anybody needs to verify that. It also gives their course grade. The credit hours is blank right now, but they just upgraded this interface for campus, so we're going to try to get some other things and change the layout a little bit on this. since that was just a recent change. A little bit about our site itself, or our community of practice. One thing nice about eXtension, what they show you is they use Google Analytics to show what people have been accessing on your site, how many people have been coming. So this is since March 1st until the end of October. The number of people we've had visit, the unique visitors, how many of our pages have got viewed, the number of pages per visit that people look at, bounce rates, a whole lot of things like that. Whether they're using mobile devices, mainly it's computers that they're getting there from, using Internet Explorer. And it's also nice to see what materials they're looking at. In this case, our respiratory protection sheets and round bell handling safety were at the top of the list with the most views. So what we see the impact that this may have on AgrAbility is as it being a source for you guys for current ag safety and health information. It hopefully strengthens the link between AgrAbility and the eXtension system, as Paul mentioned earlier, is something that the USDA is looking for. I think the USDA has put a lot of resources into this system, and they want to see us succeed. So they're encouraging or almost forcing some people to use it on a regular basis. So we're here to help you use that and to help strengthen your proposals. And we'll talk about how to do that in a little bit. And then we're going to, how we can partner with AgrAbility staff, individuals like you, to write more content, to get more useful material up on the site that could be used by others, and that you could direct people here to use it, as well as your National AgrAbility site, and try to have some support from in both directions there. And then the final thing about if you need to develop some online courses, and you want to try to host them in this environment, we'd be glad to work with you to try to work that out. So now we're looking at, just briefly, I was going to run through, but since we're a little shorter on time, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Not to scare you away from helping us, but to show you it's not that difficult to help us out. So what we're going to look at is how to create an article, or how we go about this inside the system. They have another website you go to called create.extension.org, which gives us a web-based interface. So as long as your web browser's compatible with the system, you can do this on just about any device. I haven't tried it on my iPad yet, but you might be able to even do it on mobile devices like that. So under the navigation bar over on the right-hand side, we have the Content tab. We click on, we want to add content, so we're going to create one of those things we refer to as an article. Here we're going to create an FAQ, so we click on FAQ. So I'm putting the question in, what's AgrAbility? People may ask that. And what I'm telling them for the answers is I go and read our article about AgrAbility, and I give them the link to it. So if they were to click on that, a little more on the development first. As we're developing it, we put tags in on it, and this helps sort of on the backside and with the search engines find that. So there's some additional information that we put in there. If we were to click on the preview button down at the bottom here, then we would see what it would look like if people had looked it up in the search engine, both a trimmed version of what it looks like when you do a Google search. You still see a few words, and then the full version. In this case, it was a short question and answer, so it's pretty much the same in both cases. And then we can see down here that it's in draft status, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we look at, here's where we need people to start looking at this stuff. The way that the eXtension process works is someone creates an article, and then we need 2 other reviewers to review that material. Then it goes to an editor from eXtension that looks at the grammar and punctuation and all that. Then it comes back to us here, and we make sure if they've changed any grammar or anything, they haven't changed the technical meaning of the questions. So then if they clicked on the link in the answer, this is the page we have on the National AgrAbility Project. And what it does is it has some links in it to the National AgrAbility Project's website, as well as links to where you can find individuals in your state that participate in AgrAbility. So I mentioned earlier the editing the articles or the FAQs. So back over on the side, last time we clicked on the Content tab to make new stuff. Now we're going to click on this Workflow tab, and what we're going to look for is articles that are ready for review. So if we click on that, it takes us to a page where it's basically a search. We search the farm safety and health area, and we look for either frequently asked questions or articles. A lot of times Linda, what she's doing now is directing people which ones to do, so it's not as overwhelming for the people going into the system. So in this case, I just picked the one on eye protection for ag workers, just to show you a screenshot of that. So here it's in the draft phase. We can see at the top here it's still in create. So that means that the public cannot see these documents yet until we publish them to the public side. So this is sort of the back side where we work and get stuff made up. So when you do this and you want to make changes, there's an edit button up here. So you can actually make changes right in the document. And what this system does is it tracks all the changes that are made, so we can revert back to earlier copies. We can compare two copies to see what changes people have made, if they have any questions or if we have any questions about that. So everything's tracked through the system. If you scroll down to the bottom of this page, you would see this publishing workflow. And what happens is once you make some edits, you can also add some comments at the bottom. You change this to under review. Once we get 2 reviews done, then that gets changed to ready for copy edit. That's when the e-extension people look at it, and then it comes back to us when it says ready for published, and then we change it over to published, and then that's when it goes over to the public side, and everybody can see it. Just briefly, how to answer and ask the expert question. Sometimes people get a little concerned about participating in this part of it. What it is if people search for a topic and can't find the answer, then you can type in your question, you hit submit. People at e-extension find the right community of practice or the right person to direct that to based on what I've told them I can answer. Then here's an example of an email I got the other day, and you can see that what the question is down here. It gives me this link to reply to it. It also gives me the original question. In this case, it was related to the online certificate course. How long is the course? What's the deadline for submission? And you can see the different questions related to that course down through here. So once I click on that, it takes me to a page inside of here where it's AE or Ask an Expert. This is just an example of another question. I couldn't go back to that question because I already answered it. So I went into the system just to see what questions were hanging out in there looking for answered. This was just one that was up there. As you can see up here, it says that question's been hanging in the system for 6 days. Nobody's picked it up. What they try to do is get answers to people within 24 hours, but that doesn't always happen. If you want to answer that question, you can say assign the question to me. If the question's already assigned to you, you have a button over there that says respond to the question, and you can type the answer in. I've been an Ask the Expert person for since we started, even before March, and I think I've received 1 or 2 safety-related questions, and I'm also in the engineering group, so I've received probably 4 or 5 engineering questions the whole time I've been in there. So you're normally not overwhelmed with questions as you go through the system or if you participate in this part of the system. Here's just an example of those questions that you can look and see how many questions I've answered. In this case, I said I've answered 7 questions since I've been involved with the system. And you can see that the one here seems pretty far removed. I want to enter data. This IFSM system was designed at Penn State, so they decided that maybe I could answer that question. And actually, I knew the guy that developed that system, and I pushed it off onto him. But you can do that as well. If they give you a question and you're not comfortable with answering it, you can send it back to the system, or you can suggest who that it gets passed on to. Still have a little more time here. Looking at how to create an online course, so moving on from the Ask the Expert, they do have a lot of useful tools inside of this create area again, with answers, question, and the same way that we create our articles, the people from eExtension create articles that just stay on the backside that help us find answers to questions of things we want to do. So a lot of things they have step-by-step methods for doing. If they don't, typically if you ask them, they'll try to get that created, and then they put it up to share with other people. But this is the part of creating an online course, so they have one for establishing a fee-based course. So it's similar if you were doing it as a non-fee-based course, but you request a course space from Moodle by sending them an email to the help desk, and then they respond to you and tell you all the steps to give you that space to start making your course in. It's just like the other articles where it sort of hangs out on the back end until you actually need the course on the front end. Once you have everything set up, then they can make it live and people can register for it. One thing nice about this, I tried doing courses in Penn State's course management system, but I manually had to enter all the people into it. This is all automated. They sign up for an ID with eExtension, and the eExtension support staff are the ones that enroll them in the courses. They collect the money. They can collect from credit cards and other things like that. So it's a pretty useful system, or at least I found it to be. Working as far as with the grants, the USDA grants, as Paul mentioned, that you might need to start working with eExtension, and they have a whole process for this. I'd love to just be able to say, yeah, we'll work with you, but eExtension won't let me do that. We need to come up with, they have a whole process, which I'm sure Paul can share with you as well, because like he mentioned, they went through that process. But what it is we start conversing about how we're going to disseminate information or host webinars or whatever we're going to do for you. Again, they have another sheet that tells us what all we need to do, and we can see the outline here. So we need to start contacting the administration of eExtension, telling them what community of practice you want to work with. You'd contact me or Linda as community of practice leaders, and then we start developing a work plan, what we're going to do for each other through the system. And then once we have that worked out, we send that on to the eExtension administration saying that we're both willing to do this, and then they write the letter of support. So the USDA is looking for a letter of support from eExtension administration to support your project, not from me. So if I write a letter, it's not going to fly through the system the same way it would if the eExtension administration wrote that letter. Excuse me. As far as, we have a few more slides here and we're just about wrapped up. As far as getting involved in the community of practice, as far as helping us review articles, write articles or review and write FAQs, how you can help us promote our community of practice, and then how we can help you share your information if you want somewhere to host it or if you want somewhere to get the word out about some of your programs. You contact Linda. She can get you signed up in the system and go from there. I have our contact information at the end here as well. And that is the last slide. So there's our email addresses. Sorry for the technical glitch there, but I think we made it through most of the material. A little bit of it we went a little faster in, but I probably just would have bored you with all the exciting stuff of adding articles into the system and FAQs into the system. So I guess from there, we'll see if anybody, we're just about at ending time, but if anybody has any questions, we'll let Purdue deal with those and send them on to us. Type them in, or they can activate your microphones. So we'll look at the list here.
Aaron, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Again, I echo your apologies for the technical issues. I appreciate your patience, Aaron, and hanging in there, and everybody that continued to stay with the session today. I was not familiar with the online course aspect. Now, are there certain requirements for being able to participate in that? Does it have to go through approval from the committee, or if somebody just wanted to start an online course, what would procedure be?
pretty wide open right now. The only requirement they have is that you have an e-extension ID, and that's not a real rigorous process. If you don't work for a university, sometimes it takes a little more justification to get an e-extension ID. But we've had many people from governmental organizations, nonprofits, and other things like that that can get e-extension IDs, and that's the only requirement they have now to set up an online course.
So there's no review process through e-extension for the content or anything?
Right now there is not. I should mention the e-extension system is still pretty much in its infancy, so they've experienced different growing pains here and there, and a lot of times policies come up not until something happens that require that policy. So it is still pretty broad and pretty wide open as far as those type of areas.
Okay, thanks. I will, while we're waiting for other questions at this point, I'll go ahead and read you what the RFA indicated for the national project in terms of e-extension requirements. And again, this may not be the same for the state projects. I have no idea, but just to let you know what we were dealing with, it says the AgrAbility project encourages projects that develop content and programs suitable for delivery through the Cooperative Extension Systems e-extension initiative. Funds may be used to contribute to existing communities of practice or form a new community of practice focused on farming or ranching with a disability. Projects must align with the e-extension vision, mission, and values. A letter of acknowledgement from e-extension is required, and a letter of support may be required from one or more of the communities of practice. And then it does give a website to go to for how to partner with e-extension, but essentially we had to both get a letter of support or a letter of acknowledgement from the, I guess some of the coordinators of the entire e-extension system, and then we did get a letter of support from Aaron's community of practice. So that's just to give you a little bit of background and possibly some preparation for what may come out with the upcoming proposals.
Yeah, I guess, and Paul can confirm this as well. When you want to do that, it could take a week or two. I know on the document that e-extension has up there, it says to allow for 2 weeks. I think we pushed it through a little bit quicker with the national project, but it's something that doesn't happen at the last minute oftentimes. So to get these letters of support, which most of you probably do a few weeks in advance, hopefully, when you're doing these, but it isn't an instantaneous thing. It takes some time with all the talking back and forth between both the community of practices, the proposal, the project putting in the proposal, as well as e-extension administration.
I think that's an excellent point, Aaron, especially for this cycle. We're anticipating probably 14 or 15 projects up for competition. So my recommendation would be as soon as you get your RFP, that you check that and go ahead and, again, there's a specific link on the RFA, and it tells you the procedures you need to go through and who to contact. So I would recommend, if it is included in the state projects RFA, that you go to that immediately and start that process right off the bat. Because if 14 projects, or it could be 20 that apply, 20 even more than that. If they all wait till the last minute, you may get disappointed, and the way it's worded, it's a requirement, not a recommendation. So I would advise not putting it off too late.
Right. I won't be very happy then.
Aaron will not be very happy then. And you won't be very happy if your proposal doesn't even get reviewed.
Right.
At this point, I don't see any questions. I think people are just glad we survived the session. So again, we appreciate Aaron. And so I'm going to go ahead and do our poll questions now. And again, thanks, Aaron. And we appreciate your your input and patience. And I did mention that you've got an AgrAsafe webinar coming up next week. Is that right?
Yes, next Wednesday, I think at the same time.
Yes, I'm looking at their
Or
website.
if you check the AgrAsafe network.
I'm looking at their website right now. If you go to agrasafe.org, that's AGRISAFE.org, December 5th at 12 noon, and I believe that's probably Central Time. It doesn't say, but they're in Iowa,
Yes.
so I'm guessing that's Central Time, so that would be 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And
Yeah, I think that's correct.
you can
So
still...
we're presenting a lot of this stuff, but we won't have the abridged version. Hopefully, if we don't have any technical difficulties, we'll be going into this a little more in depth and maybe slightly changed up a little bit.
So yes, if you're interested in trying again with Aaron, just go to agrasafe.org and register for that webinar. Thanks again, Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay, if you can hang on, we'd like to get your input on the session through our poll questions. So, there are a couple names I did not recognize. If you could tell us your professional affiliation, and again, if you're in any way affiliated with an AgrAbility project, please click AgrAbility staff member, but if you're not affiliated and part of another organization, please choose the most appropriate one. Okay, appreciate your input on that one. The next question involves the information that was shared. And again, we realized that that was a little bit difficult to hear in some cases, but from your best opinion and your the information you were able to get today, if you could fill that in, we'd appreciate it. Okay, thank you very much. And the biggie question for today is on the technology. So if you could indicate how you felt about the technology for today, we certainly appreciate it. And if you had other comments, specific comments, and could share those in the chat window, that would be helpful to us to get as many specifics as possible. So if you got bounced out and didn't indicate that, or got bounced out multiple times or had other issues, if you'd be willing to share that in the chat window, that would be helpful to us. And again, for those that participated in the earlier webinars in this conference, I think you'll corroborate my statement that we didn't have many problems at all. So hopefully we got them out of the way for this one, and we'll be good for tomorrow. I thought maybe it was a Big Ten rivalry between Purdue and Penn State's internet, connections or something. I realize tomorrow's is with Northwestern in the morning, so it could, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it could be the Rose Bowl of internet connections. I don't know. We'll find out, though. So thank you for the input on that. And then finally, as we always ask, based on today's session, would you attend another in this series? So appreciate your comments on that. Okay, again, for tomorrow at 11 o'clock Eastern, Craig Heckathorn from the Northwestern Prosthetics and Orthotics Laboratory is going to be sharing about the results of his research that they did on farmers and prosthetics. He's got a lot of good slides, so I hope you'll consider tuning in for that. And then again tomorrow afternoon, starting at 3 Eastern Time, Cliff is going to be sharing some hands-on kinds of material about setting up a YouTube channel and also how to use the toolbox online more effectively. So thank you again for your patience and for participating today, and we hope to see you tomorrow.